Hi, my name is Sophie Fafinski, and today I'm doing my entrepreneurship interview presentation. So I interviewed a woman from my church. Her name is Jennifer, and she and her husband founded Haven Acres, which is a youth ranch out in Hampton, Minnesota. So I asked her a series of 8 questions. I'm just going to read off the questions and tell you what she told me. So the first question I asked is, how did you get the idea for Haven Acres? The first thing that she told me was that God actually spoke to both her and her husband separately, and they ended up talking about what they learned during that church service, and they both felt that God was calling them to start a youth ranch. Along with that, this inspiration came from when they adopted a boy when he was about 15 years old, and he had a lot of mental health issues, and they wanted to potentially put him in a youth ranch or help him get involved in a youth ranch, but there weren't any locally in Minnesota where they were located. The second question that I asked is, what is the service that Haven Acres offers? So Haven Acres offers services to youth who are from the ages of 9 to 17 years old. They do sessions during the summer and fall months that are free of charge. They work one-on-one with a mentor and a horse of their choosing, and they work with them consistently, and they help build those consistent patterns to help them work through any physical or mental ailments that they may run into. The next question that I asked is, how did you build your team? Board members, staff members, and volunteers. So the board members, they started off right away praying about that. Jason and Jennifer are both very spirit-led people. They started off praying, and they had a lot of close friends that were passionate about what they wanted to do at Haven Acres. They loved kids, and on top of that too, they were very smart when it came to business stuff. So they knew that adding these people onto the board would be beneficial spiritually, to help further the mission and also help them fiscally and financially. Next up, for staff members, so Jason and Jennifer are technically staff members, but they aren't always paid, but they have one consistent staff member that is paid. Her name is Holly. She started off as an intern in 2014 and was hired on a couple years later to be the assistant program director. So for volunteers, honestly, a lot of it, Jennifer said, a lot of it's just been God providing as Haven Acres has run into the need for more volunteers. Depending on what you're looking to do, if you're a volunteer, you usually just go through a sign-up process. They do a background check, but if you're wanting to be a mentor where you work one-on-one with the kids, you have to go through a mentorship program, and you have to go through an interviewing process as well. The next question I asked is, what is your approach for marketing? So they keep it pretty simple, as a lot of their marketing is done by word of mouth and recommendations. So what they specifically do and are intentional about is keeping social media updated. So they do Facebook and Instagram, and then along with that, they keep their website updated as things change within the program. Secondly, they also do newsletters, and within those newsletters, they send those to 625 people, and they do those quarterly. The next question I asked is, has Haven Acres experienced any major failures? If so, how were those failures handled? So talking to Jennifer, she told me that they haven't experienced any major failures, fortunately, in their 6 years of being opened. So they've only run into some hiccups along the way, like finances and issues with volunteers, but luckily they haven't had any major failings that have kind of shaken a lot of things. Luckily, it's been pretty consistent. Along with that, Jason and Jennifer have taken precautionary steps to ensure the success of Haven Acres, and they pay everything with cash, and they make sure that that if they can't afford to do something, that they don't do it. They don't put themselves in debt over it, and they just take it year by year, having projects lined up and hopes lined up, and just hope for the best when finances come in. The next question I asked is, how has your path on entrepreneurship impacted your family? And Jennifer said that Haven Acres has significantly impacted their family because Haven Acres is on their property that they live in. There's a lot of back and forth with volunteers coming in the house, using the restroom. They don't have specific areas for everything quite yet, and I'm sure it's a goal down the road, but as of right now, the house is just kind of public domain, so I think for their family there's kind of a lack of privacy there, which can be difficult at times. Along with that too, sometimes ministry can really take over, but they do their best to make sure that a family comes first and that there's a balance with that family life and that ministry life, and they prioritize to make sure that their family has the best upbringing and that they don't resent Jason and Jennifer for it. Along with that too, they've had to make some sacrifices with family quality time, trips during the summer, privacy, and personal financial freedom. Jennifer, one of the founders, quit her job as a full-time nurse, and she went on and did Haven Acres full-time. So she cut that very good salary out to pursue this career that God is calling them to do. One of the next questions I asked was, what keeps you driven and inspired to run Haven Acres despite the difficulties? The main thing Jennifer said was that Jason and Jennifer, they were both feeling extremely called to this, and it was just so clear from God that this is what they were supposed to do that it just doesn't seem like something to doubt. They just knew that it was the right thing for them. And along with that too, they see the outcomes that the youth have, and that they're becoming stronger and better people because of this program, and that they're able to overcome physical and emotional and mental ailments that they're running into. And I think that's also another reason why they feel so driven and so called to this. What has been Haven Acres' most successful moment? So she said, there hasn't been any monumental things, but a big thing that happened was last year when they had a kid coming in that they were mentoring, and he opened up his life to the Lord and he gave his heart to the Lord, and ultimately that's the goal for Haven Acres. They do a lot of things where everything's faith-based and involves God, but it's not always up in your face as you might think a ministry would do it. So having those little victories of youth giving their lives to the Lord is a huge thing for them, and it makes them very excited. So this wasn't a question I asked, but it was something that you asked me to answer, was what did I find the most insightful about my interview with Jennifer? And I would say there were two things. So the first thing was the amount of work that goes into being an entrepreneur. I don't think we really grasp it because we get so excited by the idea that we forget that, doing these things, doing our callings, doing what God is calling us to do takes a lot of work. And secondly, kind of going to what I just said, is there takes a lot of sacrifice to do what God is calling us to do, and I think sometimes we overlook that, and sometimes family gets overlooked. So something that I learned is just understanding and knowing how much entrepreneurs or people who are even in ministry, it's kind of random, but it kind of ties in, of just how much sacrifice they have to make and how much they have to put on the line for something like this. And that is all. Thank you for listening.